Hello everyone, welcome to the Firebase session. My name is Rosario and I'm a developer relations engineer on the Firebase team.
And I am Marina, and I am also a developer relations engineer on the Firebase team.
So today we're here to talk about Firebase. Firebase is Google's app development platform for mobile, web, and gaming apps. Our mission is to help developers build and grow apps and games that users love. Many development teams around the world use Firebase to build or operate their apps. We power over 3 million apps and 7 billion users across various app stores and web. Firebase is easy to integrate on iOS, Android, and the web, as well as a variety of gaming platforms. You can ship cross-platform apps with ease with Firebase as your unified backend.
So Firebase aims to help you doing all the phases of developing an application, which usually goes like this. First, you have an idea and you want to create an app from that idea. But there are a lot of things that you need to think of when you are building an application, right? You need to find out whether you're going to build your own backend or if you want to have a backend as a service. You need to think about security, storing things securely, how to grow your apps, and how to control the quality, how to make sure that the app is performing well on the user's hand, and how to avoid losing your users and getting new users onto your apps. And so this is a lot of things to think, and Firebase aims to help you doing all these phases of developing an application. And this on this slide, you can see all the products that we offer. And I'm going to go over each one of them and talk a little bit about each one of them. But I'm not going to deep dive because it would literally take hours to go into details in each one of them. And I'm going to start with the products that we offer that aim to help you building your application. And let's go column by column. So the first one here is Firebase Authentication. And this service helps you to provide an authentication system for your users, for them to sign in, to create new accounts. And it also has flows for deleting the account and signing out your users. And we offer a lot of authentication methods. So we offer email and password, which is one of the most known methods for authenticating users, phone authentication, where you can send a code through SMS and the user can use that code to sign in. Anonymous authentication, which is for creating guest accounts, so the user can securely store data in your app without having to give all their personal data for you before even trying out your app. And also some federated identity providers, which is if the user already has an account with Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, many other providers, you can use that account to log into your app using Firebase authentication. Moving forward, we have our two databases, so Real-Time Database and Firestore. The first one was Real-Time Database. It was our first database, and after a few years, we created Firestore. That has some differences. Essentially, they're both NoSQL databases, which means you don't structure data the same way you would in a SQL database with like tables and columns. You store data in structure called document, which looks a lot like a JSON with pairs of keys and values. And these values can be of any type: strings, numbers, binaries, and anything that suits your needs, the needs of your application. And so these databases provide an easy way to store data and to convert this data back to an object that your code can understand. And there's no way that I can tell you which one is better because it depends on the scope of your application. So on the official documentation, we have some guidance on what would be the best database according to the scope of your application. Moving forward, we have cloud storage, which is a powerful, simple, cost-effective way to store objects in the cloud. So images, GIFs, videos. We have, in the second column, we have AppCheck. So AppCheck helps protect your API resources from abuse by preventing unauthorized clients from accessing your backend resources, regardless of where these backend resources are. So it can be Firebase services, it can be Google Cloud services, it can be your own APIs. App check just helps you to verify that all the calls that are being made for that API come from on an authorized client. Next, we have Cloud Functions, which lets you automatically run backend code in response to events. These events can be HTTPS requests or events triggered by other Firebase services like Firestore, for example. And this is going to become clearer further in this presentation when we provide a real example of Cloud Function usage. We also have extensions, which are prepackaged solutions that you can just install into your project, your Firebase project, and start using right away. One example is the extension to delete user data. Essentially, when you have a user on Firebase authentication and you delete this user, you should delete all the data that belong to that user in any other Firebase service. And we have an extension that you can just install and configure in your Firebase project in the Firebase console, and it does it for you. Whenever a user is deleted from Firebase authentication, it deletes all the user data stored in other services. And this is just one example of an extension that you can use. If you go to extensions.dev, which is our extensions hub, you can browse and look at all the many extensions that we have there to solve common problems that are faced on an everyday life of a developer. And moving forward, we have hosting, which helps you building and deploying your websites and apps without having to manage any infrastructure. And it does it in a secure way because it provides a built-in zero configuration SSL certificate. And those were the building products. So moving on, let's say you just deployed your application, it went for production, and now you need to keep monitoring to make sure it has a good quality. So we have Crashlytics and performance monitoring that aim to help you to do that. And the way they do it is Crashlytics helps checking for crashes and errors in your client apps and reporting it to a dashboard where you can filter based on many different things like device type, operational system, version of the app, and then you can easily keep track of all the issues in your application. Performance monitoring lets you check the performance. So how long did your app take to load, how long a specific screen took to load, or if you want to measure a specific part of your code or some, like, let's say some logic, you can add custom traces and see how that trace is performing on the user's end. And having that, if you want to test a new version before releasing to production, which is highly recommended, we have two products that help you with that, which are Test Lab and App Distribution. Test Lab is a suite of a lot of devices, either physical devices and virtual devices that we offer for you to run your tests on. So we have support for all platforms, so many Android devices, tablets, TVs, Apple platforms, web. We have all these devices where you can run tests and get the reports. And we have app distribution. So if you have a group of like people that are testers for your app, you can register all these people, create groups on app distribution, and every time you have a new version that you want to be tested, you can easily just upload this to the app distribution dashboard, and all these testers are going to have access to this version, and they can send their feedback back to you in the console. And these are the products that help you improve your app quality. And once you have a good app in production that has a good quality, you probably want to grow it for other users and also keep engaging the users that you already have. And you have a set of tools to help you with that. The first one on the first column is Remote Config. Remote Config is a service that lets you modify the appearance and the behavior of your application remotely without having to ask your users to download and install a new version of your application. So you can configure keys on the remote config dashboard, and you can listen to these keys on your client apps and make your apps react to changes on these keys, and then modify not only the behavior but also the appearance. And if you use these keys on remote config, you can create A/B testing experiments from it. So you can test, let's say you have a key on remote config that is for the color scheme of your application. You can send one group of your users can have one color scheme. another group of users can have another scheme, and then A/B testing is going to tell you which is being more successful in the user's hands. And this is just a small example. You can use that for like measuring features and other UIs. And on top of that, we also have personalization, which uses machine learning to deliver the best experience to individual users. So A/B test experiments help you define the best version of your app generally that's going to be delivered for all users. And personalization is going to deliver to each individual user the version that fits their needs and that keeps them engaged the most. So for me, the best version, the best color scheme for an application might be different than Rosario's version, and then I'm going to have a different version of the app than he has, because personalization helps developers to do that, to deliver the best possible experience for each user. And then you can also create messaging campaigns to help engage your users. So we have FCM, which is Firebase Cloud Messaging, to send push notifications even when the app is not open. And we have in-app messaging, which sends messages when the users are actually in your app. And it works very well with analytics because you can target your messages to specific user segments. And it might seem a little bit abstract right now, but we're going to give real examples of case studies that use these messaging campaigns further in this presentation. And but yeah, the last product that you see there, which is analytics, is just that analytics help you identify different user segments, and this powers a lot of other Firebase services that you see on this slide. Which brings to the last thing I wanted to say on this slide, that is, we have a lot of, as you can see, a lot of products, and they very good. Even if you use only one of them, they work very well, but they are very powerful when you can combine more than one of them. And again, we're going to check real life examples soon.
So now that we know a little about each of the Firebase products, let's take a look at a typical application development lifecycle. When you're developing a brand new app or adding new functionality to an existing app, you need storage and compute and app components like, for example, user authentication. And then once your app is ready, you want to share it with your users in a controlled fashion, while keeping an eye on their experience and any potential crashes that may happen. Finally, once your users start enjoying the new app, you want to learn more about them to perhaps identify the most valuable users and decide to further personalize the experience to retain them. The good thing about all that is that Firebase can handle all of these three phases. So by using our set of tools and cloud services, you can develop your apps faster, you can run your apps with confidence, and you can get a set of powerful tools to engage your users to maximize revenue. Firebase also works very well with many of other Google products to bring the best app development experience to developers. For example, our backend tools run on Google Cloud to give you an infinite number of on-demand scalability. We also partner with AdMob to help you design optimal rewarded ads experience for your users so you can monetize your apps without risk. And thanks to our partnership with Android Studio, you can easily get insights into crashes and issues that may be affecting your app.
And so from now until the end of this presentation, we want to show you real life examples of what you can do with Firebase services and some case studies that we have. But before, and we're going to provide one example and case study for each one of the sets of products. So for building, for keeping the app quality, and for engaging our users. But before we jump into these individual examples, we would like to share with you this case study, which is from Le Figaro, and they use many services across Firebase platform. So they use 11 out of the 19 products that we have. And this is just one example of what I said earlier, that if you combine Firebase products, it can become very powerful. So Le Figaro is a French newspaper, and they've been on the market for over 200 years right now. So of course, at some point they said, okay, we need to find out a way to not only deliver the physical newspaper, but also to have a digital version, because that's how many people read the news nowadays. And so they created a set of applications, and they don't have a big team. That's important to say, a big development team. So they needed they wanted a backend as a service, a backend that was ready for them to use, that would make it easier for their team, the small development team, to get up and running fast. um, they also wanted to pay to enhance the number of paid subscriptions, and then they used Firebase for these two challenges that they had. So for the first one, they used Firebase personalization and remote config to deliver the best possible experience, a personalized experience for each one of their the users. And of course, when you have a personalized app for you, it's more likely that you're going to pay for this app because it's very tailored for what you want to read. And by using Firebase services, they managed to grow their paid subscriptions in 300%. And by using building blocks for the backend, they sped up the development process in 86%. Sorry, they decreased the development time in 86%. And so now I'm going to give a few examples. We're going to give a few examples for the building, app quality, and engaged products. So for the building products, let's say you want to build an application for that allows the user to take a picture of something, and if there is a text on this image, the user can copy that text. To do that with Firebase services, you could follow this flow that I'm going to say right now. You could have Firebase authentication to signing the user to your application. Then the user would take a picture of the image that he wants to extract the text from and store it in cloud storage. And that would trigger a cloud function. So that's when I told you that I was going to give an example about cloud functions. So every time you upload a file to cloud storage, it can trigger a cloud function. It can be a trigger. So in this example, that would trigger a cloud function that calls the Cloud Vision API. The Cloud Vision API allows developers to easily integrate vision detection features within applications. And one of these features is called OCR, which is optical character recognition, which can literally recognize characters on an image. And so this cloud function would call the Cloud Vision API, which would perform OCR on that image, extract the text, and store this text back in Cloud Firestore in a document. And when you have a Cloud Firestore instance or a real-time database instance, all of your client apps, the Android app, iOS, Flutter, web, whatever app you have in that project, all of them can subscribe to listen to events that come from these databases. So every time a new document is created on Firestore, in this case, it will notify your client app, and then you can use that event to show a dialog or a pop-up to your user, asking them to confirm if that text is correct. And once the user confirms that, you update the document back saying, it's confirmed, this is correct. And if you're building your app from scratch and you don't have a backend before that, this might be the end of the line for you. But if you already had a legacy backend before and you want to update it as well, you can trigger again another cloud function when this Firestore document is updated with the confirmed. And it will, on this cloud function, you will run the code to update your legacy backend. One real life example that we can provide on the building products is Faves. So Faves is an app that is used to create the inventory for brands. And the challenge that many brands had was, so we want to buy clothes for the inventory for the next collections. We need the whole team to be updated when someone does when buys a big set of clothes, because we need to know how many of each size, each color we have. And so they needed an app that would keep the whole team in sync, and that would be where they would be able to take a picture, let's say, of the tag of the cloth and have all the info in it. So the price, the delivery date, the color, the size, and everything else. And that's what Faves does. It follows a very similar flow than the one I just showed you. But instead of storing it in Firestore, they store the information on the clothes tags on real-time database, because for their case, it made more sense to use real-time database. And so that's how they solve their challenge. They used real-time database for performance, scalability, offline catching, and to keep the whole team in sync on what they were buying. And they are, as we saw, the same flow as we saw on the slide before. They are using other building products as authentication and cloud functions, and they're also using hosting for the web version of this application.
So now that we've covered the benefits of developing apps with Firebase, let's talk about keeping them healthy. And that's also a point where Firebase can help. So let's see an example, and let's just say that you've just finished developing a new feature for one of your most popular apps with thousands of users, and you're ready to publish this app or this update to the App Store or the Play Store. Firebase can help you roll out new features with confidence. When rolling out a new feature, you may want to start publishing it to a small percentage of users first. With Firebase, you are in full control of your rollout. So first, before you upload a new build to the App Store, you can put this new feature behind a feature flag by using remote config. And then, using Google Analytics for Firebase, you can select 1% of your user segment who will experience the new feature. So once the 1% of users have the new feature enabled, you can use Firebase Performance Monitoring and Crashlytics to monitor user experience with the new feature and look for any potential app crashes that the new feature may cause. So let's say, for example, that after rolling out this feature, we're noticing a regression affecting a small number of users. We can use BigQuery to dive more deeply into our data and see what's happening behind the scenes. And let's say that we did our investigation and we found out that the app crashes are only happening for users with very old and low performance devices, but they work almost fine on 100% of other user devices. So at this point, you're going to want to exclude a segment or exclude these problematic devices of the release and then continue the rollout. And you can do that using remote config. So as you can see, throughout this entire flow or throughout this entire release of a new feature, you never had to push a new build to the App Store other than the first one that you did in the beginning. And that's what Hotstar does. So Hotstar is like the Netflix of India. It has around 200 million monthly active users and up to 13 million, sorry, 200 monthly active users, and they're it's a very innovative company that frequently pushes new features to their many users. But the market in which they operate is very fragmented, and many users have like low-end devices. Thanks to Firebase, Hotstar was able to segment their users based on device capabilities and also roll out new features in a controlled manner by using remote config without the need to ship multiple app builds.
And with that, we arrive at the last group of products that we have, which are meant to help you engage with your users and by offering rich analytics, A/B testing experiments, personalization, and the messaging campaigns. And before we talk about the case study, let's say that you want to understand better your user base so you can personalize your app experience and with the goal of reducing churn. So let's see how you could use the products to do that. So first you need to know your users. And with Google Analytics, you can easily divide your user base into audience segments so that you can further personalize their experience. And based on these audiences, you can predict which users are likely to churn. And finally, if you really need to deep dive in your data, you can mirror all the events to BigQuery. After you understand and start segmenting your user base, you need to start experimenting and optimizing your application core and your application. And core to this is remote config, which allows you to remotely change your app behavior without the need to ship a new build and make your users download and install a new version of the application, which is very time consuming and inconvenient for some users. And if you combine that with Google Analytics and with A/B testing experiments, you can design and execute experiments to test what makes for the optimal app experience for each target segment that you have. And finally, if you need tools to help retain your existing users and to acquire new ones, we have in-app messaging and cloud messaging. So in-app messaging offers push notifications that will pop up directly in the app to, well, perhaps you can present your most valuable users with a special offer. On the other hand, if you have users that are not using your app that frequently, you can use cloud messaging and you can reach that users that haven't visited your app in a few days to re-engage them. Perhaps you can offer them a discount on some products, which will make them more likely to open your app and start using it again. And the case study that we want to share now is for Halfbrick, which is an Australian company that is responsible for big games that we probably all know, like Fruit Ninja and Then the Man, this one on the screenshot. And they used Firebase services for two goals that they have, which is the first, maximize ad placement without damaging retention, because for some users, if you have that many ads, they're going to stop using your app. For other users, they're not very bothered, so you need to know to which users you can present ads and which frequency you can use each one of your users. They also wanted to know what is the best moment to display the rating prompt for getting rating on the App Store. And by using remote config personalization that tackles on the power of machine learning, they were able to achieve those two goals, and they were able to increase the average revenue per daily user on 16%, and they were able to increase the positive store ratings in 15%.
So why are app teams choosing Firebase? Well, number one, because it's integrated. So all of our 19 products work very well together. Second, it's trusted by developers because we are built on GCP and we are backed by Google. And third, because it's easy to use. And it can help developers save time to help them ship new features faster and with confidence that their users will have the best experience with their apps. So if you want to learn more about all of the Firebase products, you can visit our website, which is firebase.google.com, and you can read more about each product. You can get the documentation from there, and you can even get support in there if you need it. And if you're looking for video tutorials, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is linked from this slide, and you can also get some interesting getting started tutorials from there.
Yeah, for all platforms that we support.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, we're open to answer them right now.
So I see a first question on chat. How hard would it be to port an existing database to Firebase? Let's say I would like to use Firebase for better features and scalability.
You want to get that?
So I think the answer for this one is it really depends. Because if you're using, it depends on the database that you're currently using. So if you have a SQL database right now, it might be a little bit hard because both Firestore and the real-time database are NoSQL databases. So the real-time database uses like a JSON structure. It's basically just a JSON tree. And the Cloud Firestore uses a collection document structure. So if you're migrating from SQL to NoSQL, it might take a while to port an existing database. While if you're already using a NoSQL database, it might be a little bit easier. So I would say the definitive answer for that is it really depends on your existing stack. So next question. In the case of Le Figaro in France, do you know whether they used a Firebase extension for subscriber payment, for example, the Stripe extension?
I don't think that is. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on that answer, but I believe they did not use the extension. But this is something that we can search for and bring it back. I don't know if there is a way we can post links after this session, but we can certainly investigate that.
Next question. I have been using MLKit for things such as code scanning with Java on Android, and it is great. Is there any plan to make such functions available in the web API? This will be so great for machine learning lovers. So I think MLKit. So MLKit used to be part of Firebase, but now it has migrated, and now the Android team is maintaining it. I don't think there is a web API available right now, but I'm pretty sure you can look at alternatives such as TensorFlow JS, for example. It could be a nice example. Or if you're looking for something, if you don't mind doing it as a like cloud based thing, you can look at the Cloud Vision API that Marina was sharing on her slides. It could also be an alternative if you're not looking for some on device specific APIs.
The next one is what are the practical advices on how to start the journey with Firebase? So to start the journey with Firebase, there are different ways that you can do it. We have a very nice documentation. So if you go to the official Firebase website, you can open the specific, like the build products section, the engage product section, the app quality, and you can check for each service. The official documentation has code samples. It has real apps in our GitHub repositories where you can get the examples from. And it has this for all the platforms that we support. So we support Android, iOS, Flutter, Web, and Unity. And even for each platforms, we know that there are a few developers who still use Java for Android or C for iOS. But we do have both like Java and Kotlin and C and Swift. We try to provide all the code samples and the app examples that we can. So checking the official documentation in our GitHub repository is a very good way to start. And as we were saying before, we have the YouTube channel, which has very good tutorials. And we have one tutorial that is available for all platforms that is getting started with Firebase on and then the platform. And this explains with screencasts and slides, explains all the journey to onboard on Firebase and add the services to your applications. So I would check the Firebase YouTube channel and the official documentation.
So the next question says, can you let us know if we decide to use Firebase, in which cases we would use Firestore versus other Google storage solutions, or let's say a legacy storage solution, for example, a website with SQL? So the thing I really like about Firestore is because of its real-time capabilities. It's really easy to connect a mobile app to the Firestore database and then get it to sync in real time, which means whenever a value is updated on the database, it immediately reflects on the app. And when you update a value on the app, it also immediately reflects on the database. So I would say use Firestore if you're building a mobile or web app where you need it to synchronize quickly. It can be a good solution. Well, as in other Google storage solutions, I'm not sure if they provide any type of similar capabilities.
Do we have more questions? Oh, that was all. Okay. So thanks everyone for staying with us until the end and for sending the questions. And
Yep.
that's it.
Thanks, everyone.